the mainstay about, like, you're very familiar with the visual stuff. The thing that I'm trying to facilitate with MovMed by and large is what is the support system for the visual system? And how is it that we can confirm that there's a middle to the two eyes? If the two eyes are not evenly distributed in their dominance, and you create some degree of partiality to one side of the skull or the other, how do you bring it back to center? A lot of people talk breath, but I think it's not so much the breath, but it's the anaerobic pull of the throat and how that pulls on the cranial structures. And if you can start
Mhm.
to really pull those cranial, like you think a web, if you're a spider in the center of your skull, you're shooting webbing at every single point through the skull, and then you pull them all together at the same effort. That's the suction. And then a lot of those points that are under suction don't inhale well because they're already compressed. So the idea being, as soon as the suction gets to a maximal point, not a forceful point, but a shared degree of vacuum in all the structures, it's going to start to drain a lot easier. Once it drains, the congestion will start to allow for better perfusion. And then through that, it's like an exchange of mucus for breath. You're able to like start to expand it, and that'll translate to the neck. I think it's largely why my rib cage has grown so much, because the pull into my skull has become a lot more easy, and my
Mm.
ability to like evenly distribute that pull between my ears as opposed to it just being in the front of my face has become a lot more easy as well.
Hmm. Hmm. So in a way, this strings and attachments and how they're lifting up the rib, they're getting a little bit more volume for the area of the ribs.
Yeah, a little more pumped. My excitement factors are increasing in my cranial tissue.
Fucking nerdy talk. Like Saturn factors are increasing my spider
Well,
web sentence.
what should I say alternatively? I have a better head boner.
Now I get it.
Yeah, enough people calling me a dickhead. I don't need for them to be like, that guy, the one that's talking about his head boner.
So all this kind of theoretical stuff, I think it's an interesting conversation to have in how do you, in like a workshop setting, since we're hosting a workshop at Johnny's place in November, how do you find, especially in like that bigger group setting, uh, you're able to communicate this stuff through different exercises and whatnot. Like you just had an event in LA. I don't know if you have any kind of insights or wherewithal, Nate, about, or Johnny, either of you, about um, communicating kind of the nuance of some of these pressure shifts and whatnot to a group, and what kind of feedbacks seem to work well for that.
There's a lot missing in the scope of how familiar I am versus how familiar a new person is. So I had a number of certified coaches attend the workshop, and then a couple of people who have not been certified. Everyone takes value, but to the degree by which someone who's not familiar takes value is definitely determinant on how much they're having their voice in the back of their head saying, but what's this for? What's this for? And knowing that the people who have been certified are going to have that answer, or they're going to hear that answer later and it be a little bit more coherent to them in the first place, uh, it makes me aware that there's probably some starting pamphlets and the like that make the most benefit, like writing something out. So
Mm.
for this next event, I'm going to be writing out a number of things that people can start with a couple weeks ahead of time.
Mm.
And the best thing I think people can understand is that the things we do the most are the things we shouldn't be thinking about, which is why we're not thinking about them. So like, unless it becomes an issue, we're not thinking about how to poop. Unless it becomes an issue, we're not thinking about how to eat. Unless it becomes an issue, we're not thinking about how to sleep. And all those things are something that we shouldn't be thinking about, but they do become an issue in modern life. Like, we're eating poorly, we're not interacting well with our internal organs, so they're not moving around enough, and maybe there's some lacking motility, so we're not digesting well, or we're not, as you said, one of your clients has GERD, and so the quality of her ability to process that has improved from these things, but it's not like she was like creating muscle tension consciously or preventing muscle action consciously. It was something that happened, whether it be from lifestyle or an immune response or whatever, a stressor that she just didn't cognify. So I think the biggest thing for people to understand is that there's a dozen different benefits that are going to come from single exercises. And in order for us to conceptualize all those dozen benefits, it'll probably be best for me to write it out, show it to them ahead of time, and have it be in the back of their mind. They're like, oh, this might actually help with, oh, this might actually help with, instead of thinking that there's going to be an answer on the other end of it. So realistically, everyone took and takes benefit from the exercise, but there is a value in creating a little bit of a itinerary, so to speak. You're going to learn about this, which plays into all of these human behaviors. These human behaviors are something you shouldn't be thinking about when you're exercising, but for the sake of our activity, I just want you to notice the potential for improving these things. And as that happens, I think a lot of people will start to appreciate them more before they start to seek questions, get distracted, and find problems in their understanding. Because at the end of the day, everyone will understand it. It's just they have to know the scope of how many things are being changed.
Yeah, I agree with that, Nate. And also another thing I want to link up for certified coaches in movement, or people who are learning from a certified coach who are practicing this, is that there's going to be a disconnect between the language of the skills that you're going to learn practicing movement, which I mean, it was very new material for me. It could seem a little bit intuitive, the idea of telling someone, hey, yawn, or create swallow motion, swallow activity, or breathe, or how many other cues that you were gonna practice or hear with movement. So once you get over the hump as to what is this doing to me, or how is this gonna benefit me, just as he mentioned, it's about doing it. For example, myself, as I started practicing movement, the first few sessions was, okay, it's a very cool things that I'm learning from Nate. I don't know how they're all gonna come together, but it's making me do a lot of the regular functions of my body that I just never really got to notice how it could have an influence. Once you go from the stage of being unconscious, incompetent, into, okay, now I'm applying it more frequently, journal every now and then how I feel doing it, you're gonna actually be able to recognize the benefit from it because you have gathered data about your advancement throughout the practice, and eventually you'll be able to actually take away some of the drills that you already have a good conscious competent of it, and you can apply in other drills. So it's all going to be like an evolution of building bricks by bricks. And the complicated part may come when there's a lot of material, because there is, and doesn't mean that's not a bad thing. It's just you have to be organized into picking and choosing what you want to work on, given this good solid 3 months or 6 months, or whatever it is your learning skill or your learning level when you do these things, and then slowly add more things, or just stay with what you know and let some time settle and then come back into learning it. So between giving yourself some time, gathering data, and sticking through the process, those are going to be key components for people. When I'm training people into doing this, I usually start them either as the beginning of the training session or the end of the training session. But it's just as important as a warm up, as a chat, because this is going to develop more skills later on down the road that will allow them to do things better with less complications.
Totally. Yeah, everyone's talking about how to brace. Everyone's talking about how to do it efficiently and what the right way to do it. Fundamentally, the right way to do it is the way that babies do it, not thinking about it. So there's qualities of the human behavior that are natural. They should be reflexive. And instead of them being a reflexive behavior, they're a proflexive behavior. We're controlling the output. We're trying to make it happen. We're driving the bus and looking out the window at the same time. And there's a quality of like, yeah, you can look forward, but how are you going to pay attention to all this stuff when you're driving the bus? You can't. You got to free up some options for, say, if you're playing football, how are you able to sprint as fast forward as possible and look behind you at a ball? How can you use your head in a different direction than your body's going? Well, you have to coordinate that there's a degree of extrasensory perception, be it your ears, your proprioception, your vestibular system, your visual system. It could be all kinds of things. It could be just the collection of extrasensory and intersensory behaviors that create the full map. And for most of us, we've reduced our map to only the things that we can control. You guys both come from a system that's very mechanically inclined. And I mean, one of them, you guys have a background in more than just one thing, but to that effect, I've seen in many people's experience, having gone through FP and coming through MovMed, that it's only an enhancement to those behaviors. If they want to continue doing some degrees of biomech drilling and they want to do some dynamics on a cable machine, or if they want to do whatever it is that really fits that model, it only becomes better. It only becomes like more enjoyable and more reflexive, so they don't have to like juggle all the pieces while they're also twisting in circles.
Yes, 100%. I was just talking about that with one of my coaches here in the gym. His name is Chris, and we're talking about the differences between a human being who's stuck in sympathetic and a human being who's stuck in parasympathetic, or who is not stuck in sympathetic. Now, what I mean by that is through the biomechanical practice, there may be this overwhelming capacity of a human to understand or to follow your cues during a situation of stress, which is relatable, right? You're in a plank and someone tells you, hey, elevate your hips, but you're thinking about the difficulty, you cannot breathe, your shoulder's getting tired and everything's getting overwhelmed. And then you hate listening to your coach telling you to do one more thing because your body is stressed. And it doesn't mean that stress is wrong, but the way you have learned to manage stress is not appropriate. So practice and movement, it doesn't just teach you about your senses, but it allows you to understand that there's stress, that you can grow from it, and then you can still react well to it. And this goes also into shakes. Shakes happen because the body's trying to recognize what's going on. It doesn't mean that you need to aim for them to occur. They're going to happen, but you're going to also have to learn how to manage it and recognize that that shouldn't be a thing. So at some point, you can let go of the shakes and just be okay with whatever it is.
I assume you guys have both seen the guy that's been passing around Instagram recently that's has like a borderline seizure doing doing some FP stuff. He's like
No, I
keep him
stopped
shutting
looking at
down.
stuff like that, dude. I don't look anymore.
It's I don't know how it's even getting on my feed, but I've had conversations with a number of my clients who are on the precipice of leaving the like the open FP community, or at least as soon as they start to be seen doing my stuff, I'm sure they're going to be kicked out. But the quality
Mm.
that I'm seeing that comes up a lot is that they're saying in conversation with other FPers or people who have done the material for a while with them, the difficulty is we're holding our breath a lot. We're having to manage a lot of things at one time that maybe in 6 months, maybe in 8 months, I'm going to be able to understand better. But right now, it's just like do it, do it, do it, make it a pattern, make it a behavior over and over and over. And my question for you guys, because you guys have both gone through the both sides of it, how do you experience yourself remediating that behavior of holding your breath all the time, thinking about the next behavior? Do you feel like you've taken some space from that, or you feel like you've been able to free yourself from the hold of your nervous system a little bit, so you're not holding your breath when you're learning new behaviors, so you're not like forcing patterns anymore?
Yes, yes. So for me, let's talk about the holding breath. Holding breath was happening a lot, and I wasn't aware of it. And the complications of it were, besides affecting my diaphragm, my shoulders, my traps, my back, whatever it is, I was not coherent enough. And the reason why that was happening is because there's this idea of CO2 competence. So the idea of being able to work without oxygen or breathing, which is a cool idea, but it's not relatable to my everyday life. I don't really have to hold my breath for a living, so there's no reason for me to practice that. And the same way when training and things got overwhelming, it's because you are doing an exercise for a long period of time, which is not wrong. I mean, you can do many things for a long period of time. But there's going to come a time and place in which if there's too much instruction, it becomes overwhelming. And then you keep on thinking that you're not doing enough, but in reality, your body's doing enough, but you're pushing past the boundary. So even in relation to biomechanical training, before the expectations were pretty high for me as to, oh, I want to get this person running and looking like whatever athlete. It will be on my feed from everyone else talking about that we should all look like. And now it's not about that. It's more about, okay, this is where you're at. I would like to get you to move a little bit more. And then if that feels better, we keep advancing. And then eventually your body's going to tell me what it wants to look like, how it wants to move. And that's what we're going to do. And if you want to change it, it's because that's your decision. We can go about it. So a lot of those rules and beliefs that I had according to how everybody else trained has changed. For example, the shakes, as you were mentioning, I believe in some communities and the biomechanics are all about it. They think, oh, that's the lo and behold. If you really go down to the deep, you can just have a person hold a stand with one leg in front for half an hour. You're gonna see shakes. It may not even be half an hour, maybe 2 minutes or 1 minute, depending on the person. So there's no surprise how this could happen. If anything, my question now as a trainer is, why would I want this to happen to the person? And it's the stress that this person is about to take on. Is it going to allow this person to grow, or am I going to hurt it more according to the reason why they're working with? So I I changed a little bit my rules in that into what I think is better for their health.
Yeah. So what about you, Ben? You've gone through the ringer.
Yeah, I definitely still notice some like tensioning patterns in my system that were kind of wired in during those FP days that I'm still working my way out of. I think there's some stuff around the feet, and even I was thinking today about kind of the way that I was approaching hip extension with some of the old school FP exercises, where just like the significant amount of focus on like, do this joint action and this joint action at the same time, um, in order to build tension, and then do it with like, this core tension, and just the way that it kind of compartmentalized the way I thought like my movement options were supposed to be, or the way that I thought, okay, I'm restricted here, so I got to push into these ranges. It just kind of like almost made me get used to running into a wall over and over again and thinking like I'm going to get through this wall one day. Versus like kind of understanding that, okay, if I do feel that, or if I run into the wall, one, can I like just like, get to the wall without bashing my head into it? And then can I like kind of search around for the door instead?
Yes, nice. I
Um,
like that. I like that, Ben. Very good.
yeah, there's I think that happens to people probably in like the stretching communities and whatnot. I don't know how just FP specific that is. Um, but yeah, it's something that I have to be still conscious of. And there's a lot of there's a lot to be said for the flow within an exercise, even if it's like in a slower, like a slower ankle motion, just like an ankle E version. How much are you just like building tension for the sake of tension, trying to feel it, versus how much are you smoothly trying to like understand or like own every little bit of that range, uh, without it being like a jerk. Like with my ankle injuries, I'll get to the point where I haven't used my foot for a while, and then it's kind of like even just a simple dorsiflexion is kind of like this. And I could think, okay, I got to stabilize it with tension and then try to move it. But that's kind of like the same approach again, versus like understanding the ability to yield and the ability to like again kind of search for the door in places that aren't even specifically at my ankle. Am I like gripping something in my chest really hard or in my hips really hard, and being able to take kind of that more fuller body like diagnostic, uh, in the midst of just a simple ankle exercise. A lot of that I think comes back to the like the parasympathetic kind of response, just like that feeling of sturdiness and like rootedness in a way where you could be adaptive, you can move in different directions, versus like instantly I'm trying to do something kind of hard at my ankle, I'm gripping at my jaw, I'm kind of like all of a sudden I've gripped at my hands. All the things that I had kind of patterned in, like holding on to those kahuna sticks, even I think there's something there with like all the different like hip ranges of motion I was trying to get into with like chambers and stuff, with how I was like supporting myself and creating tension in my shoulders to try to leverage that's been a kind of trip to be like, no, this is not the way to create space. I need to actually like find the space the other direction. Um, so yeah, it's still something that I feel like I'm working my way out of, to be honest.
Yeah.
Nice. In regards to that, I do want to say something. I do believe that functional patterns, it's a great tool, but in reality also is that a lot of us who started as functional patterns trainers, we're not proficient or coherent enough in our skill level before learning from this methodology. Now, what I mean by that is FP is great. It's a nice tool to start to understand, okay, this is how I can get to repattern my body. I put my body in positions, I and bring awareness into it, and I see if I can move from them. But a lot of us as trainers, we may have gathered the idea about how to train a human body through the teaching skill of a teacher. And maybe how this teacher teaches those behaviors, you try to bring that into yourself and put it into others. And that may have created a lot of compromise in the material. For example, I have learned from Naudi and all these other FP trainers, and the way they taught, I would try to teach the same way. And of course, it will elicit similar result, people convulsing during an exercise and holding their breath, their traps are getting tight, just as they mentioned, holding the kahuna sticks. But now as I recap 10 years after the fact of me learning this material and having my own journey, I recognize that if I have people balancing with sticks, I have to bring it to attention, hey, yo, don't hold them with your dead life, right? You're gonna hurt yourself. And if you hurt yourself, it's your fault. So there's these things that my experience had allowed me to understand that, just like any methodology, it has its good things, but my ignorance and some of the stuff didn't allow me to understand that it could lead to complications down the road. So another thing with movement is that you're learning how to transverse or travel positions. You could call it chambers for some people who would like to use that word. Um, but you're being mindful about one, you're breathing, two, you're safe, and three, you're doing this because you're trying to learn something. And you don't go into it like, oh, I'm gonna hurt myself for doing this. It's more, hey, I'm trying to work on this and I'm not gonna hurt myself. So it's a whole different concept that I think it has to evolve. And for any beginner trainer as well who wants to learn about the human body, I believe movement will be such a good starting stage that will set the foundation towards, okay, this is a human body, this is how I can train into more complicated stuff before you go into more advanced practices. Not to say biomechanics advanced, but more practices that require more complicated systems or more tuning in possible.
Totally. The foundation to allow you to integrate. That's what I want for people to understand. Like, by no means do I have anything against FP or I can't say by no means. There's a number of things that I could say that
There's
are
a few things.
not great about the protocols, but at the end of the day, I do like the fact that there's some people who really take value from it. I think there's some underlying physiology that they don't understand or they just jump over. And I think that like you said, safety, you don't have to be like protected by a group of people and feel like you're warm and fuzzy. That's not what we mean by safety. But since we do predict and expect by way of our nervous system and brain, if we don't have a relationship with what's going to happen, we're going to have a reflexive response or a guarded response in relation to what we think is happening. And by nature, it's not something that we can control unless we really delve into the unconscious behaviors of ourselves, which is a totally involved process. And you have to understand tons and tons of things. We just need to know how our tissue adapts to our focus, adapts to our excitement, adapts to our lack of coordination. So if we can't make sense of the environment, we're probably going to jump into whatever our like underlying program is. And that program is usually not very functional, but it is very self-supportive. So anything that we're doing in guarding is designed by our brain, designed by our body to protect us. And if we're trying to overwrite that and we're not giving it like the respect it deserves, then we're going to tell ourselves, hey, you're wrong for doing something that's right. It's never going to be an agreement between our mind and body. And we're going to start to just say, hey, these sensations don't mean anything. We're going to discard them, even though they're trying to tell us something. And we're no longer making sense of the environment. We're no longer present to the environment, and we don't have as much as a byproduct blood flow to that area. And so we have to motor recruit to improve the blood flow. But as a byproduct of increasing the motor recruitment, we're reducing the blood flow again. And like compounding the tension. So I think the best thing that for people to take away from at least what I think MovMed is, we have a natural underlying capacity to excite both our mind and body. Our body excites the same way that our genitals excite. And so you'll see that in the same way that noses and ears grow perpetually throughout the rest of our lives. If we're very good at supporting the excitement factors, nitric is not going to degrade the tissue. It's not going to make it all red and swollen and weird. It's going to make it consistently capable of oxygenating, consistently capable of housing CO2, and then capable of supporting the pump. If we don't support the pump well, we're going to degenerate. We're going to make everything that we have denature, and it's going to become less elastic or too tense. And as a byproduct, our fascia or our nervous system or our muscles or our tensegrity, everything's just going to fall out the window, and we're going to try to like robot our way through it. And it's super important that we don't do that, because we're not robots. We need to self-lubricate. We need to self-excite. We need to be able to focus on one thing and multitask on a bunch of other things. And then at the same time, our nervous system needs to control thousands of different processes that are happening with or without our conscious attention. So at the end of the day, I say, do whatever you want, enjoy doing whatever you want. Just make sure that you have a built out foundation of not just knowing how you feel, but being able to take that into new settings that you've never done before. Just like a kid on a playground, I want to try this new thing. I'm going to try this new thing that I've never done before. I have no framework for, but I believe I can do it. Why do I believe I can do it? Because I trust my body. If you don't have that trust in your body, it's not about learning all the right tools, beep, boop, beep, boop. It's about learning how to create the allowance or the space or the yield for your body to start doing what it naturally does. And that's bracing reflexively, that's exciting reflexively, and allowing for you to focus when your body is braced and excited.
Yes, and through that you're gonna grow, and you're gonna be able to figure out that all those limitations you had were because you weren't willing to try it or think about that, doing that motion.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. You weren't willing, you had to control it mentally, you had to know what the next step was. That stuff's not natural. It's a good way to take
No.
a stick and put it way up your butt.
Yes, nice. Now back to the topic. I was doing the other day, I was doing with some clients doing Valsava while walking and maneuver. And of course, it's just more feedback. So just to recap on what you mentioned there, Valsava maneuver is something that we're talking about recently in movement that you're sharing with us. And besides the many benefits that people will find through practicing it, is that you're not limited with movement material to just being seated position or standing. You can explore other situations. Like you can do a Valsava, look to the right, imagine you're gonna grab a ball, and then you can start understanding that your nervous system and your body can be more coherent during these positions. In addition, it's gonna create different sensations for the breath, the stress system for the neck. So it's a nice tool that you just need to open your eyes and be able to be creative once you start, once you have a good foundation.
Yeah, the foundation's important.
And if you
Mhm.
want to build your foundation, you come to Florida November 15th to 17th for a little certification MovMed Level 1 hosted by our friends at Connective Wellness, Mr. Johnny Veira.
Yes, yes, we're pumped about it. We've been talking with Nate and Ben about this certification, and one of my goals with this certification is to um, he- uh, help and also provide some of the services to other trainers or people who are enthusiastic about learning in how their body has been working and what they can do to improve the way their body can function. It's been very helpful for me, not just as a human being being able to do my daily life, but also my ability to teach and have a better understanding as to where people are. So if you're a coach out there and you've seen what I do or you've seen what other people in movement are doing, this would be a nice place to get your in-person experience and get a little bit more of the communication with us as to what's going on in this material.
Totally. Yeah, I'll share my intention with the workshop as well, or sorry, certification. Aside from increasing the coaches capable of serving clients with MovMed materials, there is this notion that there's a right and wrong in fitness, and there's a right and wrong in exercise. And so long as you're finding value and enjoying yourself, there's really no wrong. There is a efficiency factor, and that is like if the cost to the sympathetic nervous system is such that you're losing myelination or you're losing out on underlying nervous response, so the sensitivity of your nervous system, that's hugely impactful for late age, like late stage life. That means that you're going to have way less motor function in your later years. And it means that there's going to be huge impacts on your social environment, huge impacts on your bowel movements and your sleep, your excitement factors. And it's very easy for people who experience stress to have heart disease, to have mental disrest, so like imbalanced mental responses or just general mental illness. And the thing that I've experienced with a lot of people who've gone through maybe not even just a cert, but they work with Ben or myself or a number of one of our coaches, excuse me, like yourself, Johnny, is that they come back to us and they're like, I didn't even realize I had this much space to enjoy things that I didn't know I could enjoy. And one of Ben's regular clients, she lives in the US. Um, she has been working through a number of injuries. She's had concussions, um, loss in her life. And the coolest thing that I'm seeing with her is that it's almost like she's getting younger, she's getting more passionate about her life, and she's finding herself really excited about what some people might consider menial things because they take for granted, I can do this without pain, I can do this without discomfort. But dude, it's cool to see it's almost every few days, it's several times a week sometimes, where she'll reach out and be like, I have a couple of wins I want to share with you. All these things that used to drive me insane are no longer making me upset. I'm getting really excited about being able to help other people who I'm seeing experience the same thing. So she's not only socializing more, but she's socializing better. She's starting to notice how similar she is to other people and how much she can help, where before she felt like she was helpless in her own right. And so it's very cool to see how the access to life becomes much greater when you start to appreciate all the things that you are, all the things that you have, and all the things you can be, as opposed to all the things you want to be. And so becoming present to your state, working through that state and getting really, really strong out of your stress, it's like climbing the mountain nobody else can climb for you. And so that's a really incredible thing for people to make a change in their life that oftentimes they'll go to a therapist, they'll take some pills, they'll make some changes or take some drugs, and it may have similar responses in some parts of their life, but it definitely doesn't give them full access to everything, doesn't let them be their full self and feel like they're their normal personality or have all the potential in the world to be who they thought they were as a kid. And a lot of people are like becoming their kid selves again, trying out things that they never did since 15, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. And I want to put something with it is so some people nowadays are looking for a professional to tell them, who they are or what's happening to them or what is their experience or put some kind of scientific wording into it that allows them to go into a dictionary and be like, oh, this is me, I am a person with scoliosis, and it's all good, I understand it, but within this, just as Nate mentioned, you had to at one point understand where you're at and work with it and see if you want to change anything at all, and then you can go about it instead of waiting for someone else to tell you where you're at or who you are. For example, when people come to my assessments before, I used to be like, oh, this happened to your hip, this happened to your ribs, and you have this scoliosis, you have that. And now I'm more, if anything, I let them know, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Are you able to see that? And this is something that if you want, we can work on it. If you want, you cannot. But when they ask me, so what do you think is my problem? Where do you think I am? Or how long it's going to take me? I'm like, don't even worry about it. Just worry about the fact that just come to sense that you're here and we're going to work with one thing at a time. And as you keep improving, we add more pieces because it's going to be a journey. And a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people want to hear the 1 week or 10 sessions, but that's unrealistic. And that's what allowed me to improve and allow a lot of my clients to improve. So just something for everyone to keep an open mind.
Totally. And it's not to say you're not making extreme progress. You're just not trying to put the onus on them to feel like, hey, you have to track your progress as quickly and as significantly as you used to. Like I have someone who's been in pain for 7 years. After 2 virtual sessions, she's flying from across the country where you guys are, or we're Florida, and she's coming over here for a visit to get some hands-on work because it's that impactful from afar that she wants to experience what it's like and get the hands-on relief that in-person session will give her. And I'm not trying to sell anyone on 1,000 sessions. I really would prefer you work with me as short as you need to or as short as you can, because that means that we're doing a good job. It doesn't mean that we're keeping you in the loop for as long as we can, because I'm not a babysitter. And you don't need a babysitter. You just need to be yourself and get access back to yourself and enjoy that.
Yes, yes, 100%.
Cool. I think we got to wrap up to get to Matt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Matt, taking my spot. Okay, okay. I'll get you guys next time.
thanks for popping in, Tony. We'll see you in November. Looking forward to that.
Likewise. I'm very
Sure.
excited to meet you in person, dude.
Yeah, I'm excited to meet you guys. And November's gonna be nice. It's not gonna be too hot. It's relatively hot, 85. So everything that is very nice. But we
We're
got the
right.
beach nearby, and so some positive things.
Yeah, for sure. The humidity is going to be a hard thing because I'm coming from LA. It's 100 degrees right now, but it feels like you're 75.
Dude, over here it was so humid, no air, no wind. It's just like pouring.
My
But
hair's
yeah, come.
wild. I might have to get a haircut before I see you.
You're gonna have to get a haircut. So be ready to sweat when you guys come over here, guys.